like kind of regarding economies of scale. So, we've been talking about how maybe in Mexico a wind energy company might lose out to the coal company because even though they have subsidies, it's still not economically viable because of the law. We're also talking about the plasma thing where there's like 300 or so houses that it can supply. So what's the development curve on this kind of stuff, and when will it be viable for instance, a national energy supplier to really go for these kind of things? Because obviously they are very innovative, they're eco-friendly and all of that, but there's the cost factor. So what do you think about that?
So you mean like worldwide, just sort
or
of
even
like,
on a maybe a Western power like Japan, for instance? Maybe if the Japanese government wants to roll this out nationwide, when do you reckon that kind of thing is going to really happen?
I mean, that's a phenomenal question, and I mean, you really pointed to the core problem that renewable energy companies really face, which is cost, right? And I remember actually Khosla, this sort of big venture capital leader in Silicon Valley, who I mentioned before. He has what he calls the China rule.
China rule. Okay.
And so the China rule is if it's not competitive without subsidy in China or India, he won't fund it.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, he obviously funds very early stage companies, so he's investing in an idea rather than a sort of established conventional technology. But I have to agree. I mean, that's really, I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
These projects.
Right.
In terms of seeing large amounts of market share, I think that right now, simply because the costs are high, it's incredibly political. You really have to understand the very complex relationship between government and industry in any particular place in order to really get a gauge on how friendly the market is for renewable energy and how much you'll see it grow. Now, there are, of course, examples of markets where that might happen really quickly. So if you're talking about market share, like Hawaii, for example, is great for renewable energy.
Right. Because
where else are you going to get it? Right now, the import oil and burn oil to produce electricity, which is expensive. It means that their electricity prices fluctuate with the cost of oil, which is really dangerous to do. And that's true of any island nation, right? So, and Japan actually has a relatively eco-friendly portfolio. Well, actually, how eco-friendly it is now really depends on how you view nuclear, which has turned out to be not particularly eco-friendly lately in Japan. But it's because they have no domestic resources. But if you look at a country like the U.S. or even China, when you have abundant coal, which is expensive to ship abroad, so you might as well use it at home, and it's a really good source of energy. I mean, it's hard to argue with that. And so what you need in terms of really deploying renewables at scale and any of those kind of economies is an enormous amount of political will. Because if you don't have political will backing policies that actually spend more money to get better, cleaner technologies, it becomes really hard. And that's why everybody always argues for a price on carbon. I mean, whether it's a tax, whether it's a trading program, I mean, that's why people want a price on carbon, because it gives you a playing field that builds in some of the environmental externalities into the marketplace so that those costs are included. So, I mean, I wish I could just say tomorrow we'll have like an enormous amount of market share, but I think it's a relatively long-term timeline.